Question. Now, Indian Express, the first news of the day is with respect to creating global framework for ethical use. Now, the Prime Minister of India was speaking on the sidelines of B20 Summit, which is Business 20 Summit. Yeah, there are different kinds of tracks that are there associated with the G20. For example, there is Y20, there is B20, there is MSME 20. There are multiple such subgroupings that are there, and all of them bring together a communique. They bring together a set of regulations or proposals, which will then be passed on to the main ministerial conference of G20 that will be held in September 2023. Now, what the Prime Minister had talked about, it is extremely important because of the fact that there has been number of articles and number of highlights with respect to regulation of AI. Now, regulation of AI, which is ethical, which is also for towards the working of the society, which does not have any bias, which does not lead to unnecessary invasion into privacy, and the fact that it gives us, and it also helps us modernize our technology and helps in human endeavors. So this is what the global ethical use of AI is being talked about. But more than this particular article, if you see the smaller article just next to it, Delhi helps to seek frame discourse on AI regulation. And the second part of this particular article on page number 2, I'll make you go through it. This is the most important. There is a lot of rhetoric in this portion, but if you read this part of the article, this is really interesting and something that you need to read on as well. So there is this pronounced shift in India's stance or regulating of AI. In the beginning of the year, there was no such stance that we had, but now that we've seen the proliferation of generative AI, now we know that we need to intervene. We need to have some kind of regulation, and not just national regulation. We also need to have global regulation with respect to AI. It should be risk based. It should be user harm approach that we should have. In fact, I would encourage you to read a couple of things. One is, since most of you have time for your interview as well as your mains, I would urge you to read the summary of this particular report, which is released by TRI in July, which talks about that the center should set up a domestic regulatory authority for risk based framework, and then also call up for international agencies. Just like you have a nuclear you have this nuclear agency for nuclear proliferation, you should also have an AI, global AI regulating body as well. So the agencies and the government should talk about a global agency for responsible use of AI. Now, we have also been talking about differential treatment of differential players. So remember, we already have introduced this Digital Personal Data Protection Act, but there are two more acts that we are introducing. One is called as the Digital India Act. Now, Digital India Act is going to replace the Information Act 1960 and Information Technology Act 2000. Now, in this particular Digital India Bill, what we are planning to do is we are going to regulate each particular entity depending on its importance and the kind of ramifications that that particular entity has. So similarly, we need to also incorporate the impact of AI, and then probably have some kind of regulation for AI as well. Now, another thing that you need to you might read is just the executive summary. I don't expect you to read the entire thing. Just read the executive summary of these papers. The Niti Aayog has also published a series of papers on responsible use of AI for all. And what is more important is, and what you should definitely do is, that Sam Altman, who was the head of ChatGPT, and with Microsoft, because Microsoft has a stake in OpenAI, has come up with governing AI, a blueprint for India. Now, this is something that you should definitely read, because you should expect questions in this year's mains you should expect questions in your interview, and even in next year you should expect questions on AI. This is an upcoming field, and therefore you will have questions. It will have also questions. It has ramifications on internal security as well. It has ramifications on privacy as well. It has ramifications on society as well. So therefore, because of such wide ramifications of AI, you need to read this paper, at least the summary of it. Again, you can use maybe Bard. You can just upload it to Bard and then ask for a summary for this. So download this paper, Governing AI Blueprint for India, and it talks about three things. So here it talks about three things, that the concerns being flagged are into three broad heads: privacy, system bias, and violation of intellectual property rights, because it is pulling out data from everywhere and then displaying it to the user. So all of these needs to be seen. Now AI is being regulated. There is a considerable debate on AI regulation. The European Union is going to take a stringent point of view with respect to that. The Americans might take a lighter touch or feather touch this thing towards the regulation of AI. But at the same point of time, even the US has brought over something called the AI Bill of Rights. So it's something that you need to read again. What are these AI Bill of Rights of the US? And China is also bringing its own measures towards the regulation of AI. So very, very important article for you to read, and a number of things that I've asked you to go through. Then another event from the world of sports is that of our 4 runners who have basically qualified for the World Athletics Final in Budapest, beating the US team. So you need to know the names: Muhammad Anas, Amoj Jacob, Muhammad Ajmal, and Rajesh Ramesh. So these are the 4 individuals who have won, who have basically now qualified for this. But at the same point of time, you also need to think about. We'll be talking about the politicization of sports in India in the editorial page. That also needs to we need to put it into perspective. You can maybe have a look at page number 6, 200% spike in cyber fraud this year, recovery at low. So these are certain scams that are there. I'll just show it to you. These are new forms of cyber scams that are happening. So you have 3 kinds of new scams that are happening. One is a fake call center. The other is the cryptocurrency and investment scams, and the third one is the work from home scams, which most of us have started getting on Telegram. So these are again issues with respect to digital governance. Then page number 9, Jaishankar warns crisis in making in the global south. To you. So this is another article which is important. Because this article talks about the fact that the global south is now facing issues, especially after the COVID, a couple of years lost to the COVID, and then you have the Russia-Ukraine war. What we are facing, the developing countries are facing, or the emerging countries are facing, is issues of debt and finance, sustainable development, climate change, food security, women-led development. All of these issues have not been addressed, and if you remember the climate change issue, we need $4 trillion by 2030, of which $2 trillion has to come from the private sector. So, and then the developed countries had promised $100 billion of aid by 2020 under the Copenhagen Accord. But all of this is not coming, and what we are seeing is that there is a crisis in the global south, and and this is where the BRICS is kind of positioned well to coordinate between these countries and then present an alternative system of finance to the world. So this is where Jaishankar was speaking at the B20 event in Delhi. So this is another article that you need to take up. Then let's talk about the editorial page. 2-3 good articles on editorial page, especially one on BRICS. Now, first of all, state of play. The state of play is with respect to the discussion that we have had yesterday, that there are 2 significantly different perceptions, that are different statements coming from the Chinese and the Indian side with respect to what had transpired during the Xi Jinping and Modi meeting at the sidelines of BRICS summit. Now, what the government of India says is that there was active talk with respect to resolution of the Ladakh issue, Eastern Ladakh issue. But at the same point of time, the Chinese said that we need to normalize our relations. Border is just one part of the relation that we have with respect to, and there are other parts of the relation. Whereas India now has maintained that until unless the border issue is being resolved, until unless this issue of non-access of patrolling of the Indian side in these certain portions of Ladakh is not retained to pre-2020 status, we will not be able to have constructive dialogues on other fronts. So this is where there is a stalemate with respect to India-China talks, and it is expected that maybe this stalemate can be broken down or can be diluted or can be worked upon during the G20 summit, when again Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi might speak to one another. So this is the state of play that is there. Then again, a very good article with respect to on the mat, because of what is happening in the world, in the WHI, the Wrestling Federation of India. Now the Wrestling Federation of India has been suspended by the United World Wrestling Federation. Basically, the world body has suspended India's membership. Therefore, and why they have suspended it? Because India has not been able to have elections to the WHI for the last few months, and this is because of the political turmoil that the WHI head was involved in the sexual harassment case. So therefore, because of over politicization of WHI and non holding of elections, what has happened is now the Indian athletes, wrestling athletes, who have won at least one medal in the last 4 Olympics, will not be able to don the tricolor during the upcoming events. So although it does not impact them, but at the same point of time shows the sorry state of this thing, governance in our sports administration, and this is not a new thing for India. Last year, even the FIFA had suspended India for not conducting elections in the area of football, and then in 2020 the government had itself withdrawn recognition from 54 national federation for not complying with the sports code. So especially if you are preparing for civil services, you should know about the sports code. You should also know about that what are the issues with respect to politicization of sports in India, a critical analysis of this, and how this impacts the morale of sportsmen in case of India. So read about this particular article and the overall this thing, which can come in mains. You can also use it in ethics as well. You can use it in your essay as well. Then another important article, BRICS 2.0, the teacher's heart set. Maybe you can read it. It's with respect to that Muzaffarnagar case where the issue was there with respect to slapping of a Muslim student by other classmates at the behest of the principal. That could be a negative example that you can take up for your answer writing. But my main focus is on BRICS 2.0. Now, what has happened in this case is that earlier there was this polar world which was being represented by G7. Now you have BRICS 2.0 with a very high which is now expanded to 11 countries. So it's now, you can call it as BRICS 11. Now, if you talk about this BRICS 11, this expansion was first driven by China and then by Russia and then supported by India. Now the Sino-Russian axis is planning to increase the membership because they want an alternative system. They want that there should be an anti-West system that should be there, where they can have a currency. They can have a forum where they can push their agendas as well as the fact that they want to show a multipolar world. But remember the background with which BRICS came to power, or came to limelight. It came to the limelight in 2009, and because of what has happened in the developed world with respect to the global financial crisis. Now, what has now happened is that you have this BRICS 11, which will have more political clout because it has membership from different parts of the world. Argentina has been added because Latin America's representation. Egypt has excellent ties with India and China, both, especially with China, and Ethiopia was a surprise because the result was a compromise between the claims of Nigeria and Kenya. And why Saudi Arabia and UAE have been included is because both of them are extremely rich countries, and they can then recapitalize the new development bank, which is the Bank of the BRICS. So that is something that they can do. And now we are also talking about the membership of other countries like we've already included the membership of Iran. Iran starts at the tri-junction of Asia, then the Arab world as well as the western side. So therefore, because of the geopolitical location and then the geostrategic location of Iran, it has been chosen. And then you have other countries which are also planning to enter the BRICS. Now, one of the common questions, which was one of the common areas which was planned to cover during BRICS, was the common currency, but there has been no declaration with respect to common currency. What has been reiterated in paragraph 44 of the communique is that all the countries will work together towards trading in their local currencies, which all obviously helps in India's favor because you don't need to use dollar. This process is called as de-dollarization. So de-dollarization is again a phenomenon that you should be aware about. That for international relations, for international trade, countries are not resorting to dollar. They are resorting to their own bilateral currency agreements. So this is called as de-dollarization. It's one of the reasons for de-dollarization is the weaponization of dollar that the US has done post the pandemic, and especially post the Russia-Ukraine war, where it had freezed the reserves of Russia which were there in terms of dollars. So that threat has basically started the phenomenon of de-dollarization throughout the world. So this is another article that you need to read. Now coming to another two fundamental articles, one with respect to let's debate on the basic structure, and the other is on shoring up the foundations with respect to Nippon India scheme. Now when we talk about let's debate the basic structure. Now there has been considerable debate, and this is a question that I expect in this year's mains. It might not be asked in the interviews of this, but you should be aware about this particular development. Now what has happened is that Rajan Gogoi, who was the Chief Justice of India, who's also now a member of Parliament, had recently spoken in the Parliament and said that maybe the basic structure of the Constitution also needs a revision, and it's a debatable jurisprudence basis. Despite the fact that when he was the CJI, he used to bat for the basic structure of the Constitution. Now this article basically says that the framework with which this was being debated was because of the this Delhi bill that has been passed by the Parliament, because of the strong numbers that it has, and it smacks of constitutional impropriety because it takes away the federal powers of the Delhi government. So that is where it will be challenged in the Supreme Court because of the fact that it might violate the basic structure of the Constitution, the sui generis, the own way of our own constitutional system that we have generated. It kind of challenges that, and in coming times you might see that these cases will be there in the Supreme Court. Now, if you go back to the history of all of this, it starts with 1951, where the Parliament has enacted the first Constitution Amendment Act, which talked about whether the fundamental rights can be abridged from people. Now, even the staunch believer of Constitution and democracy, Jawaharlal Nehru, had battled for this first amendment, which talks about taking power or restricting the power of freedom, of restricting the power of fundamental rights, of right to property, because he wanted to have an egalitarian society. He wanted to finish the zamindari and the land ownership system that was prevailing at that point of time. So that was there. But then there were certain measures of checks and balances that are built into our system through Article 21 as well as Article 368, which talks about that anything that can be done in case of abridging this fundamental rights can only be done through due process of law, which is an American style of construct rather than the procedure established by law, which is a British kind of a construct. So you need to know the difference between these two. So there has to be a due process of law in India by which you can abridge the fundamental rights. Then the article also talks about that after the Keshavanand Bharati case, where this pronouncement was done of what can be done and what cannot be done, what are the basic structure of the Constitution which cannot be amended. Now with time, what has happened is what constitute as basic structure of the Constitution has been kept on expanding. So it kind of limits the jurisprudence of the legislature of what it cannot do and executive what it cannot do. Despite the fact that all these election promises are made by the government, but they are hollow because of the fact that they are restricted by the basic structure of the constitution. But at the same point of time, even the current CGI talks about that the basic structure of the constitution works as a pole star in Indian politics. It gives you navigation in stormy nights, and it is well advised that to use it to fix our own location and steer the ship. So it still has a lot of relevance. It is the guiding principle of our constitution, which cannot be compromised with. So a very, very important article with respect to this. Maybe you can expect a question in mains this year with respect to this particular debate. Then another particular article is shoring up the foundation. Now there used to be a scheme, and there is a scheme called Nipun Bharat, which talks about increasing the foundational literacy and numeracy of students up till grade 3, class 3 tak. It talks about that how to increase the numeracy skills and the foundational skills. But what has happened is with the coming up of the National Curriculum Foundation and the NEP, it has divided the education into some silos. So you have this education till the second class, the early foundation class, and that it's because of that there is a clash between the National Curriculum Framework as well as the Nipun Bharat, and it is said that Nipun Bharat should be scaled down to class grade 2. Now, what we need to understand is that a number of surveys with respect to Indian education, for example, there is something called as Asst survey, annual survey of education report, which is done by the Pratham NGO. Apart from that, the PISA report, the progress of international school assessment, the TIS report, the number of assessments that have been done throughout the world, and on all these assessments, including the Asst report, what shows is that the learning and writing skills of Indian students up to class 5 and even up to class 8 are very deficient, and that is why we had this Nipun scheme which worked on the foundational and the literary and the numeracy skills of children. Now, by curtailing this to class 2 instead of expanding it to class 5 is going to have negative ramifications on the learning outcomes of students and the financial and the literary skills of the students. So this particular article criticizes the National Curriculum Framework, and it says that it could have easily expanded this to up till 5 grade and not reduce it to the second grade. Apart from that, you can read the article. It's a very, very basic article. Now let's come to the explained page, folks. By the way, page number 13, quota 2 NEET aspirants die by suicide. Another issue with respect to this thing, quota. Page number 14, folks. Now, dengue vaccines under development in India, a status report. Now, India is now what we have seen, and this is another issue that has been concerning with respect to climate change also. Now, dengue initially in 2001 it was only there in 8 states, but because of global warming, what has happened is that the average temperature in the Indian subcontinent has increased, which has led to the prevalence of dengue mosquitoes in all parts of the country. Now, even in Ladakh, you will find dengue cases. So, what we need to do is we need to have an effective vaccine against dengue, and there are 4 major variants of dengue, which is dengue 1, dengue 2, dengue 3, dengue 4. Now we have started early human trials using weak inoculated viruses of dengue, and we have had good results with respect to the vaccines that we have been developing. There are 2 indigenous vaccines that are there, and both of them are doing well. One is produced by Serum Institute of India. Now there is one main challenge in developing a dengue vaccine, which is the antibody dependent enhancement. Now what happens is that because of their 4 variants, if a particular kind of variant dengue this thing is given, virus vaccine is given, it might be the case that if a second type of dengue is attracting to you, and if you're bit by a different kind of dengue, because you have vaccine antibodies with respect to some other kind of dengue, it might even worsen up your response, body response. So we need a holistic kind of a vaccine which covers all 4 kinds, which does not have this antibody dependent enhancement. So what happens is that because of the antibody that you have with respect to a particular kind of dengue, it enhances the probability of an even worse dengue happening to you. So this is what is being catered to, and this is what the Indian scientists are trying to get. that a vaccine which does not cause an ADE. This article is important. Then 4 astronauts from 4 nations reach ISS. Maybe you can read this, ISS and what astronauts. Then what is more important is El Nino in an election season. Now what has happened is that we already know that the inflation print has increased from 4.7% to 7.44% recently. But what is more important is that this inflation can become very generalized. And I asked people who are appearing for this interview to read the minutes of the meeting of the MPC. Now, what is one? This is something that you should know and you should answer in your when you are asked for inflation. There will definitely be questions on inflation in your interviews. So therefore, you need to be very ready with respect to that. It is not just the current inflation; it is also the future inflation which is worrying, because that the El Nino is becoming even more stronger with the coming times, and this is measured through the ocean Nino index, which is touched 1 degree Celsius, and it is expected to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius, which means that El Nino is going to become very strong by January to March, which will have an impact on our rainfall. We already have seen that in August we have had a very deficient rainfall. Some parts of the country are near droughts. The water reservoir levels in the country have gone down, and this part of rainfall that we get from the southwest monsoon also helps the recharge of these aquifers. But if these aquifers are not recharged, if there is not sufficient rainfall that is going to take place in September and October, it will have an impact on our rabi crops, and that will lead to a further generalization of prices, and that might have a political ramification in terms of elections, electoral results next year. And in order to counter that, we have had a number of steps that the government has taken, from banning of wheat of export wheats, to banning of sugar, to banning of imposing 40% duty on exports of onion, to banning of parboiled and non-basmati rice. So these are all the measures that the government has taken with respect to this. Now the last page. You can read this article. $5 trillion. A country itself becomes an asset. It cannot be avoided anymore. One article that you can read. The other article: government unlikely to infuse capital in PSU general insurers by FY24. These are the 2 articles that you can read. And then on the sport page, maybe you can read the Olympic champion Neeraj is now a world champion. So you can read about this Neeraj's sporting feat. That's about it, folks. That's about it from the newspaper front. Now, I expect you to give yourself a good day with respect to your newspaper reading, as well as the folks who are appearing for the Indian Economic Services. Please go through the our business newspaper as well. So with this, I'd like to wind up our class. I will meet you tomorrow at same time, and with meditation, journaling, and the current affairs paper of today. Thank you very much, folks. I'll see you tomorrow.